My name is Ron Reynolds, and I am a state representative, but here today as chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus and chair of the newly formed HBCU Texas Caucus. I'm here today because many of you may have seen that President Biden announced that there are some states that are woefully underfunding our historically black colleges, known most commonly as HBCUs. And here in Texas, we're here on the campus of Texas Southern University. And I'm a proud product of Texas Southern University. Texas Southern University is one of the HBCUs that is woefully underfunded. There are disparities that exist between the funding for Texas Southern University and Prairie View A&M University than our historically Anglo traditional institutions like the University of Texas and Texas A&M. And so we're here today to shed light among these disparities that have existed for decades. Why is this so troubling? The reason why it's so troubling right here for Texas is the home of the most African Americans than any other state in the country. Just this last legislative session, we had a $33 billion surplus. $33 billion. And yet, and still, we woefully underfunded our state HBCUs that provide opportunity for many of these students of color to be the first in their generation, the first in their families to go to college. That means that there are less access to resources for professors, for research, for other facilities, for infrastructure. And so I am so proud to have a distinguished group of attorneys led by Carlos Moore, immediate past president of the National Bar Association, to talk about solutions. We can talk about the problems all day long. And the Texas Legislative Black Caucus was on the front line demanding transparency and accountability and adequate funding for our HBCUs. We were there advocating for it through the appropriations process. And unfortunately, because of some of my colleagues in charge, we didn't get that. And so I'm proud that an esteemed group of attorneys sent Governor Abbott a demand letter that they'll talk more about. But I support the things that were in the demand letter. And I'm just going to highlight a couple of those things that were in the demand letter that Governor Abbott received. Conduct a comprehensive review to review the funding allocation process to identify and rectify any disparities and biases that adversely affect HBCUs. This is something that Governor Abbott should want to do. Immediately allocate dollars to Texas HBCUs in an amount commensurate with the decades, emphasis on decades of underfunding in comparison to similarly situated PWIs. This disparity in funding is estimated over $1.1 billion with a B for just one HBCU alone in Texas, and that's Prairie View A&M. And so there are other things, and I'm going to introduce Attorney Carlos Moore, a very prominent attorney, and his team that is here today to demand accountability, to demand that Governor Abbott responds, and the state of Texas fulfills its constitutional responsibility to fully fund all of our state universities. And that includes Texas Southern University and Prairie View. And I'll say this lastly. It breaks my heart to continue to see the state trample upon the rights of African Americans and minorities. We saw it when we ended last session diversity, equity, and inclusion in our colleges and universities. Governor Abbott joined Governor DeSantis in being on the wrong side of history. We saw the NAACP join with the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, the Texas Mexican American Legislative Caucus, and saying, Governor Abbott, stop discriminating. When we perpetuate these disparities, we are discriminating against current and future generations of minority students that are matriculating to these colleges and universities. And so we're here in good faith, hoping and demanding that Governor Abbott and the leadership of the state will do the right thing and fully fund our historically black colleges and universities and make up for the history, the historical decades of underfunding to the tunes of billions and billions of dollars. And with that, I want to bring up Attorney Carlos Moore, who will talk more specifically about the demand letter and what happens if the state of Texas, led by Governor Abbott, does not answer in the affirmative the demands that were made in the letter that was sent to him. I present to you Attorney Carlos Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Reynolds. It is good to be in the great state of Texas. I'm joined by my distinguished colleagues from Georgia and Texas, Attorney John Moore with the Moore Law Group out of Atlanta, Georgia, and Attorney Greg Hartman of Doraine and Cawthorn here in Houston, Texas. I am the principal managing attorney of the Carlos Moore Law Group and a past president of the National Bar Association. And I'm happy to have our current president, Dominique Calhoun, who's a Houston resident here and a Texas Southern graduate here with us today. I'm here to tell you what we sent in the letter to the Governor Abbott on Monday. We sent a demand letter on behalf of the clients who represent students and alums of Prairie View and Texas Southern University, the public HBCUs in this state, asking that the governor do something about the disparities that exist in this great state. Washington, D.C., the Biden administration sent a letter to your governor on September the 18th outlining the inequitable funding and disparities that exist in this state. And specifically mentioned was Prairie View A&M, and they have a disparity of $1.1 billion as it relates or compared to Texas A&M, the other land-grant institution in this state. And so what we've asked Governor Abbott to do is to initiate a comprehensive and thorough review of the funding allocation process to identify and rectify any disparities and biases that adversely affect HBCUs. What we do not want to happen is for the governor to get the letter from Washington, D.C. and just put it in the trash can and file 13. We want him to take action, and we're demanding to take action. We're asking and demanding that the state of Texas allocate additional funds to HBCUs to ensure that they have adequate resources to provide a quality education, enhance infrastructure, and offer equal opportunities to their students. We're also asking and demanding that this state develop and implement policies that ensure fair distribution of funds and resources among all institutions of higher learning in the state, and facilitate dialogue with representatives from HBCUs, predominantly white universities, students, and other stakeholders to address concerns and collaboratively develop solutions. We know that collectively there's over a $12 billion funding disparity in the United States as between the HBCU land-grant institutions and the white, historically white land-grant institutions, and this should not be. It needs to be addressed today, sooner than later. We're asking that the governor do these things, and we're giving him a timeline to respond, a deadline to respond. And so we sent the letter on December the 4th. We have given the governor 10 days to respond to us, and we're requesting a meeting with him and his administration to see how we can collaboratively work together to resolve the problems here with the disparities. Should the governor not respond and should fail to act in an amicable manner, we are prepared to file a lawsuit on behalf of our clients, a federal lawsuit. And John Moore, the attorney from Atlanta, Georgia, with the Moore Law Group, will tell you what that lawsuit would include should it get to that point. We're hoping to do this in an amicable manner and save the people, taxpayers, dollars, and not have protracted litigation, because we know we're on the right side of history. We know that the disparity exists, it's unconstitutional, and John Moore will lay out the legal analysis should we get to following the federal lawsuit. Okay. All right, and actually he said he would do that. He is so hopeful that the governor's going to do the right thing that he won't tell the legal strategy unless we do have to file a lawsuit. So if we do file a lawsuit, we will come back and tell you that the lawsuit has been filed, and we will tell you exactly what the counts are in that complaint. And so if there are any questions at this time about the letter. Before we do that. Okay.
Before we entertain questions, one of my colleagues, who is part of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, whose district we're in now, Representative Jolanda Jones, was there when we were fighting on the floor throughout the appropriations process in the record $33 billion surplus. When we were on the floor fighting for Texas Southern University, for Prairie View A&M to receive adequate funding, Representative Jelana Jones was there, not just representing her district, but representing HBCUs across this state. And in fact, Representative Jones was there when we met with students from the newly formed HBCU caucus that was formed to address these disparities. She was there with those students. And so I want to bring up Representative Jelana Jones, whose district we're in now at Texas Southern University. Representative Jones.
Thank you. So I reiterate, I sign off on what my colleague has said and what people before me have said, which is that land-grant universities that are HBCUs should be adequately funded, and they should be funded to the levels that they're funding white institutions. Now, for me, it's a struggle, right? Because I represent Texas Southern University, where both my mother and my father attended. I also represent the University of Houston, which is where I attended. And so it's hard. I voted to support my alma mater because I needed to do that. There were students there that needed to have adequate funding. But it broke my heart that Texas Southern didn't get the same kind of love. And the only difference between the schools is one is PWI and one is an HBCU. And so, and with this whole effort to defund or get rid of DEI and critical race theory, it is a problem. Most of the black lawyers go to school at Texas Southern, at Thurgood Law School University. If you look at Prairie View A&M University, Prairie View puts a lot of nurses into the medical industry. So these universities, these HBCUs, have a place. They deserve adequate funding. And I stand with my colleague, Chairman Reynolds, and I stand with the young people who actually, as he said, came to Austin to tell us, please adequately fund us. We want to have the same kind of education as everyone else. What do we need to do? So I support not giving a legal strategy because of my day job. I'm a lawyer. And we do want to work this out. We want to work with the governor, if that's possible. This isn't a partisan thing. This is a human rights thing. This is it's a right thing to do thing. And so I stand in support, and whatever I'm needed to do, I will absolutely do in conjunction with my colleague and all the partners that we have.
Thank you. Thank you, Representative Jones. And we have one final person. He's been introduced earlier. He's a product of Texas Southern University. That is none other than Dominique Calhoun, the current president of the National Bar Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Dominique Calhoun, and I am the current president of the National Bar Association. More importantly, I'm also a graduate of Texas Southern University in the Thurgood Marshall School of Law. And uniquely, I was the former executive director for government relations for Texas Southern University. I know well about the issues for funding and the lack thereof for this institution. Quite frankly, this is not something new to my colleagues from out of state and to the members of the legislature. You all know what the Academic Development Initiative is. This was a product of the year 2000, when the state legislature and the governor then, George W. Bush, came to an agreement to ensure that not only Texas Southern University, but also Prairie View would get adequate funding.
That's right.
And currently incorporated into the budget for years has been some level of funding. However, we've seen that funding diminish over the years. And we are just here asking, not only for our legislature, but for the governor, to reconsider the amount of support that it gives to its HBCUs, and most importantly, or most critically, to the Texas Southern University. The National Bar Association stands behind this initiative. We stand with the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, and we stand to make sure that adequate funding is guaranteed for all of our minority students and our HBCUs. So I thank you all for bringing light to this attention. Thank you to the Texas Legislative Black Caucus for your work on this, and the National Bar Association will continue to support these endeavors.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, we will be happy to answer or entertain any questions that you may have.
Did they give you guys a reason for the lack of funding? A reason for it? You know, they know there's a lack of funding, but did they give you guys what was their answer to that?
We have not received a response from the governor or his team as of yet. The letter went out on December the 4th. It's December the 6th, so maybe they're busy. But we did give them 10 days to get us a response, and should they fail to do anything, we will take further action.
Yeah, but they knew before you guys sent the letter.
Yeah, they knew
It was
since
like
September
funding.
18th. Yes.
And when you guys put the question to them, what did they say about that?
Let me speak to that. You know, and Dominic, you probably can too for your relationship. I can say unequivocally that this is systemic. This has happened over and over, session after session after session. We have made pleas. We, as the members of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, have been the conscience of the House adequately asking that the state will fully fund our HBCUs. We pled from the front mic, from the back mic, from the Appropriations Committee. Representative Jarvis Johnson, who's not here, has been on the Appropriations Committee begging and pleading with them. We've had other members, even our freshman member has been at the table. We've been doing that. Before her, it was Chairman Garnet Coleman. So we've done this for generations. And the state, you know, Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them. They know the evidence is there. They see that there's lack of funding for Texas Southern, but they throw money at A&M, at U of H, at UT Austin, the flagship universities, and then they give us just enough to get by. I mean, literally, even sometimes not even enough, where these institutions are barely making it. So they know that there's a problem. They don't address it. They simply ignore it. That's what the leadership, the failed leadership of the state, Governor Abbott has been front and center for it. And before that, it was, you know, Governor Perry. So this is not a new issue. This is something that's been happening over and over and over. I've been there 14 years now. It's been underfunded ever since I've been there.
So I can tell you this, that I filed budget amendments to try to get money for Texas Southern. If you don't know how if you do not know how the budgeting process works, we will file bills or budget amendments known as riders to fund this stuff. So if you have a bill that says you ought to do X for whatever, for Texas Southern, you have to file a rider in order to be able to pay for it if it costs money. Otherwise, you'd have an unfunded mandate if a bill ended up passing. What they do is at some point during the budgeting process, they decide what they're going to fund and what they're not. And they literally take your bills, the ones that they're not going to fund, and they take them out. And they put them, is it called Chapter 11? Article 11. Okay, I was okay. So they literally pull it out and put it there. So you can tell what's important to the people that are the decision makers by what they pull out. Every budget amendment and every rider that was filed for Texas Southern University, for Prairie View A&M University, to get money was taken out. I'm going to say that again, it was taken out. And they decided it's not a priority.
That's right.
I mean, they decided it's not a priority. And the problem for us in the TLBC, we're the minority, for the most part, the minority party.
That's right.
And so the people who have all the power, they just decide what they want to fund. Some of the things they fund don't make a lick of sense to me. But hey, public education is important. I mean, the best deterrent to crime is an education and a job. I mean, the best way for people not to go into debt is to be sufficiently educated so that they can get a good job, so that they can pay for their bills. And I think it's, Chairman Reynolds said it's systemic, and it is, but it's by design.
That's right.
They want us to be undereducated. They want to underfund us. I can't tell you how much money, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't get the money. Texas A&M and Texas get up. I think Texas gets like maybe $6 million a day or something, some crazy number with the PUF fund, right? So there was a whole big fight this session to get schools that aren't in that fund, which are every school that's not Texas A&M and University of Texas, to get more money. And it started out that the schools that were going to get this additional money, which still is not to the level of Texas and Texas A&M, which Texas gets more than A&M, I think it's 2/3 to 1/3. Other schools were brought in. The University of Houston was brought in. Texas Tech was brought in. The Texas state system was brought in. So there were school systems that were brought in that they thought were important. And they weren't initially going to be in it. But people advocated. And that's a problem, that the only people that seem to care about HBCUs getting funded were the black members of the legislature. And of the 150 members in the legislature, only 17 of us are black. And it takes a minority to vote to pass anything. So let's do the math. So we need allies to come and appreciate the importance of sufficiently, adequately, and equitably funding HBCUs, and we just haven't had that. So we're very small compared to everyone else. So me personally, the only way that you've ever changed anything in the United States is to sue people. You have to hit them in the pocketbook. So that's how we got seatbelts. People were dying in car accidents. That's how we got seatbelts. You know, people were dying from smoking. Then all of a sudden you have lawsuits and you hit them in the pocketbook. So if the governor won't listen, if the Senate won't listen, then the only thing to do is to take it to the courts. I don't think we have any other alternative because people are literally dying. Families are being destroyed because of the persistent, systematic underfunding of public education generally and HBCUs specifically. And the same is true for public education high school systems like HISD with the takeover. So it's a pattern, it's a practice, it's nefarious, and something needs to be done. And so I thank you for filing a lawsuit, because I think that's what you're going to have to do.
Why is this so vital now?
Well, first of all, President Biden made this a national issue, and because it's the right thing to do, because we know that, as Representative Jones said, education is the gateway to equality, to being able to be self-sufficient and a productive citizen. And so the more productive HBCUs are, the more productive that many minorities that may not be able to go to a PWI can go to, especially in light of the Supreme Court decision. This is more relevant now than ever. The Supreme Court basically, the lawyers can discuss the case, but they basically gutted affirmative action in college admissions, right? And so there are going to be more reliance upon HBCUs. So with the fact that there's more reliance on HBCUs, there's more need for funding to make sure that we can fund the enrollment growth at these HBCUs. We're anticipating that this law being implemented, this is going to be the first incoming group of students. We're anticipating larger student populations. Without adequate funding, there won't be resources. There won't be additional professors. There won't be additional dormitories and other necessary financial aid, other things that they are going to need. And so until the state of Texas fully funds, and it is a responsibility that they have been adequately lacking with this, to the tune of billions of dollars, these students are going to be hurt. And that is why we're advocating, we're appealing to the social consciousness of Governor Abbott and our colleagues to do the right thing. And Dominique, you were there. You can speak to it. This is a problem when you were advocating on behalf of TSU. This has been last session, the president, the immediate past president, made a bold $1 billion request. A lot of people were laughing about that, but she talked about what the needs were, and she got maybe not even 1% of it. It was ridiculous. Representative Jones was right. Those riders, they were overwhelmingly rejected. And here's the thing. In the past, they may say, well, we didn't have the funds. That was always the excuse, Dominique. Last session, we had a record $33 billion surplus. They had more money than they knew what to do with. But they didn't want to fund Representative Jones' request that was reasonable for Texas Southern University. They didn't want to fund it for Prairie View A&M University. So that was the excuse they gave in the past. Well, we don't have the funds. Well, last session they had the funds and they still didn't do it.
But I would say this, why not now? Whoever said why now? Like, how long black people have been in this country, brought here against our wills, and we've been enslaved, and the vestiges of it are alive and kicking, and they actually wrapping their arms around us now, since we're going backwards now with civil rights. So why not now? I'll also say this, the governor makes it plenty clear about what he thinks is important and what needs to be funded when it comes to education. He wants to enrich his billionaire friends and rich people for their kids to go to private school and get subsidies, get welfare off of taxpayers.
That's right.
So that's important. We literally were called to 4, I'm going to say this one more again, that's Ebonics, 4 special sessions to try to pass something, to try to shove down our throats that we didn't want, and that has to do with education.
Just ended yesterday.
In fact, it just ended on yesterday, and if he calls 10 more, I'm going to all of them. Trust me, I ain't got nothing better to do. But my point is this, why do people ask for historically disadvantaged people, which we've been disadvantaged since we landed. I would say Plymouth Rock. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. Plymouth Rock landed on us.
Amen.
It took us from Africa. But we have never been treated equally. We've never been treated fairly. That's why we even have HBCUs.
That's right.
Because they didn't want black people to go to PWIs. For those of you who don't know what a PWI is, it's a predominantly white institution. So they set that up actually for separate and
That's right.
unequal,
That's
except
right.
for then we have to go get Brown v. Board to show that separate and unequal is unconstitutional.
A lawsuit.
And so
had to
now,
happen.
right, because sometimes the only place black people can go is to a black school.
That's right.
That's just what
That's
it
right.
is. So why would you not fund us to the levels that you're funding the people that have all the advantages?
That's right.
We have less. In fact, we don't have any advantages.
Nope. They
Right?
have endowments.
We
they
don't,
have
right.
all that.
And so it doesn't make any sense to me. But they want an undereducated black population.
So I think it's important because part of the rendition has been given from a lawsuit perspective. Even this institution was created from a lawsuit.
That's right.
Sweat,
Absolutely.
beat, payment.
That's right.
There's a placard on a building, one of the most oldest buildings here, and it still reads Houston College for Negroes.
That's right.
You have to remember that the only way that Texas Southern University was ever established is because of discrimination. It was separate but equal. They didn't want African Americans to attend.
It wasn't
UT
equal.
Austin.
It was never
I
separated.
completely understand. But when you ask the question, why now? There's so many things that are happening, not only with the Supreme Court down, state institutions, but here what's most important. Chairman said it earlier. You had a record surplus. And at a time when this institution is asking you for the resources to ensure that these students have what they need to be successful, you denied it.
That's right.
That's what's important. And let's think about what we are discussing, because I think it's important when you talk about a right or scenario. These are subjective. All you have to do, and because I know that there are some out there who know this process as much as I do, and please know, I have no affiliation anymore with the institution as a staff or anything else. Okay? I left the institution a long time ago. But let's be clear. A request for a new building is a special item request. You put it in and you ask the legislature to fund it. A request for a new college is a special item request. You put it in and you ask them to fund it. If you want a dormitory to ensure that the students who go to school here can live on this campus, and we know the statistics that if you go to school here, you live on campus, you will be more successful. If you want to see better outcomes from the school, you have to make the investments
That's right.
into the school. The same way that they make them for the major PWIs. If you are at a record surplus, if you have $33 billion and you want to pour back into higher education, here is the investment to make. If you want to see new outcomes for the law school, which produces overwhelmingly more African Americans and Hispanics, lawyers in this state, you would pour into them as an investment. If you want the pharmacy school, who produces a quarter of all pharmacists around the country, you would pour in as resources back into them. That's what we're asking you for. It was an opportunity for you to take an option subjectively and say, we will guarantee that that school will thrive and be successful.
But let me say this, because I think sometimes we may talk over like people's heads, right? Some people don't know how much is $1 billion, okay? Because we had 33 billion with a B, not M, B. You know how much $1 billion is? $1,000 million. I'm gonna say that one more again. $1,000 million is 1 billion. Now multiply that times 33. So if they gave Texas Southern $100 million,
Yep.
right? If they gave Texas Southern $100 million, 1 billion is 1,000 million. That's not even like a penny. Look at, you got some money in your pocket? Pull a dollar out. Let somebody ask you for some money on the corner, and you give them a penny of your dollar. Or for that matter, you got $100, and somebody asks you, and they give you a penny of your $100. You're not even going to feel it. That's how much they don't care about us.
That's right.
That's how much they have $1,000 million. So when people are asking for $6 million or $10 million, right, that's nothing.
That's
It's
right.
not even a drop in the bucket. That is the most disrespectful thing. And how much were they going to give? They wanted to put how much in with vouchers?
Oh,
For a lot
they
less.
they wanted to give each family that was already rich and wealthy $10,000 to supplement their kids' private school tuition.
Right.
Each family.
But so my point is, they ain't giving no vouchers for people that go to PWIs.
That's right.
Right? And you can try to call it however you want to call it. You can try to say you don't have the money. They had 1,000 million 33 times. And I'm offended.
And that's why I'm really grateful for the lawyers that are willing to come in and demand accountability for all the stakeholders across the state that we've been on the House floor, and Senator Miles and Senator West in the Senate floor advocating for to know results for black and brown Texans. And so we're here in good faith. We hope that Governor Abbott will do the right thing. He messed up the opportunity to do the right thing when it came to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. He was on the wrong side of history. He was on the wrong side of history, and you mentioned it, Jolanda Jones, when it came to the nonsense of CRT. He's been on the wrong side of history of advocating for vouchers. He's been on the wrong side of history with the HISD takeover. This is Governor Abbott's chance to be finally on the right side of history for black and brown Texans.
And let me just add, in 1862, when the original land grant institutions were here in Texas, and the federal government gave them that money, they did not allow black students to attend those white land grant institutions. So in 1890, the federal government says you either have to let black people attend the white land grant institutions, or we'll give you one for the blacks, but it has to be funded at the same level as the whites. And so this is the reason Washington sent the letter to the governor of this state on September 18th. They took the money knowing they had to fund it at the same level as the white land grant institutions. Prairie View has to be funded at the same level as Texas A&M. That has not been done. And Washington sent them a letter and calculated over the last 30 years alone, there's a $1.1 billion disparity as between Prairie View and Texas A&M. We haven't even got to Texas Southern yet. So we know Texas Southern is underfunded as compared to University of Houston. But Washington sent the letter and gave one example of a public HBCU, Prairie View. And so we know if we go to court, we'll win. The evidence is there. And so that's why we're doing it now, because HBCUs in this nation generate over 15 billion economic impact on the local and regional economies they serve. The communities they serve is an engine driver. So not only are the students suffering, but the local and regional economies are suffering because these institutions have not been funded equitably. So we could go on and on. I think there's one other question, but we're going to end this after this
I just
lesson.
want to ask from a historical context and what's been happening in the country with HBCUs, particularly suing states, like I guess the action that you all are trying to prevent from taking, particularly with the Legislative Black Caucus members, Alabama, Tennessee, Maryland, Georgia. All of these states have been sued by HBCU alumni who are now attorneys and won. So I think I think speaking to that from a context, as Chairman Reynolds said, historical context, this is a no-win for the state of Texas. It would be a bigger win if they didn't give the $1 billion, because we've seen in Alabama with Alabama State and Alabama A&M getting over $5 billion from the historical underfunding of the state. So I just want to applaud y'all's effort. I'm glad you put it in context of the Morrell Land Grant Act and really put that out there so people can understand why HBCUs were formed in its inception. And yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. And so finally, I'll just say, you said that the December 4th was the letter, December 10 days, so December 14th. And so we will follow up, Representative Jones, with the attorneys. If Governor Abbott does not respond, then we will certainly look forward to, working with the attorneys to make sure that we bring justice, equity, and accountability for all the black Texans and other communities of color that have been left out because of this inadequate funding at our HBCUs. We will continue to fight. We will continue to speak truth to power. Thank you.